and we all walk in, and as we walk in, I'm nervous. My God, what's going on here? And Mendelevich, he'd been in prison for 11 years. What is, this was nothing. For us, it was something. And so I'm there and a couple of other chevra, and then they bring in Mendelevich. And Mendelevich looks up at me and he says, Avi, maybe 2.5 years. That was his way of saying, maybe 2.5 years. What's that compared to 11 years? Anyway, another just sweet part of that story was that Mendelevich, when we were in the Airflot office before we were arrested, he took a picture of Sharansky, who was bald, and he plastered it on Vladimir Lenin's picture, and he slightly missed it. So when you looked at Sharansky's picture covering Lenin, Sharansky looked like he had two bald heads. That's what he looked like. And then he turned around, Mendelevich did, his hands raised. He looked like Rocky had just run up those steps in Philadelphia, just like this. And the next Friday night, I told the story at our Shabbat table about the way Mendelevich was so excited. He covered up Sharansky's picture, and Sharansky covered up Lenin's picture. And my holy son, my loving son, Dov, looks at me and says, in front of all of our guests, he says, Abba, what does Yosef Mendelevich want from John Lennon? And at that moment, I said, the Soviets are going to fall. This guy, Vladimir Lenin, thought he was going to win the minds of the world. And you're winning it when you win the minds of children. But for my son, there was one Lenin, and his name was not Vladimir. What does Yosef Mendelevich want from John Lennon? It's a great story. You can't make this up. How's everybody doing? I see so many wonderful faces. That's a good Hanukkah story. Arnie, how you doing?
Doing okay. I was on last night with you and Ruth Messenger, and
what was your reaction to that?
I was hoping, I guess, for one of a few things. Maybe
tell everybody what it was, first of all.
It was a panel with Avi and Ruth Messenger, and the focus was not really clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed very general, and I would have liked to have heard some of the likenesses and differences between the Hanukkah story and what's going on now in Israel, for one thing. I would have thought that would have been interesting. I would have liked to have heard maybe a little bit more deeply about the message of Hanukkah for all time. And then I thought,
you're right. I think we come from two different worlds, Arnie. She is a wonderful woman who has done, Arnie, wonderful things. And she says it openly. This is what I do. I help the world. And I have come to understand how important that is. And it's not a recent coming to understand. This goes back, as you know, Arnie, decades. And Bayit has been very much involved in universalistic causes. But 95% of my time, it's with my people. And I feel today more than ever, we are in need. Am Yisrael is facing an existential threat. And I'm not at all apologetic for saying we have to really use all of our time and energy to defend ourselves, to defend world Jewry, and to defend Israel. And I think our emphasis is different. I see particularism as a means to come to universalism. I think Ruth sees it in the opposite way. She begins from a universalistic platform, and actually that's not foreign from Jewish theology. If one looks, for example, at the blessings that we recite every morning before the Shema, the first blessing, this is after the Baruch Hu, for those who are familiar with the service, the first blessing is very universal. You can tell the blessing by the way it ends, by its seal. And the end is Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer HaMaorot. Blessed art thou, O Lord, the former of the luminaries. That's talking about God who created the world. Vayihi or let there be light. And that whole blessing talks about our responsibility to the world as human beings, as the other billions of human beings in this world. We have a very deep responsibility. And it's the second blessing right before the Shema that ends with Baruch Atah Adonai, Habocher Bamo Yisrael B'Ahava. You chose your people with love. That's particularistic. And so, Arnie, the movement is from the universal to the particularistic. So that does exist as a branch. And as a matter of fact, when one looks at the way the world evolved, God first creates the world universally. In the Genesis story, it begins with the broadest message. Every human being is created in the image of God. That's chapter 1 in Genesis. But it doesn't work. And that world is destroyed. And then it's destroyed again. It has the issue of not only the flood, but the issue of the Tower of Babel. And then in response, almost as a b'diavad, that's a very radical word I'm using now, almost as a second thought, post facto, God says, okay, now since it didn't work for the whole world, I'm going to tap Abraham and Sarah, and they come into the world. But they don't come into the world first. They come in after many generations. It starts universally, and then it moves to the particular. So that theology does exist. I would argue, however, that the mainstream of Jewish theology works in the opposite way. And the opposite way is you begin with the particularistic agenda, and I would begin it from when God taps Abraham and Sarah. And what's the goal of Abraham and Sarah? It's not only the redemption of the Jewish world, but when one looks at the arc of the hope of what will be in the future, our goal is, we're very far from it, doing everything we can as the Jewish people, as perhaps others are doing as well, to bring about universal redemption. Our understanding of the Messiah is it's not just a time of redemption for the Jewish people, but for all people. My house is a house of prayer for all nations. That's what it's about. If you go to the Kotel, it's a microcosm. Anyone can walk up to the Kotel and pray. So there the movement is from the particular to the universal. And that's my argument for many, many years. I argue that a strong sense of particularism does not contradict our universal responsibilities, but is a prerequisite to it. And maybe that speaks to the differences between myself and Ruth. Ruth really begins with a universal agenda, whereas my focus, while not denying the needs of all people, that's the broader family of humankind. But my first priority is my inner family, and the inner family is my family, Toby and the kids and so on. And the larger family is the family of the Jewish people. And from there, it encompasses the larger world.
But Avi, can I just say, very sadly, the universalist and the particularistic points of view have not worked in terms of October 7th and bringing in the larger community of the world to protest with us and to work with us. Jews protesting as Jews have not brought in outsiders. And the Universalists, it was very sad to me when Ruth Message said, I think in response to your question about what responses she's gotten, and she said, well, a few people have told me privately that they commiserate with me. Where, with all her international organizations, where are the people standing up for Jews right now and for the past year?
It did come out a little bit where I remember asking her, given intersectionality,
Right.
have you been canceled out? And she said what she said. And that's a very, that's a very, very big issue. But I shared that moment that it weighs very, very heavily on me. And it occurred in Teaneck, New Jersey, not long ago. And there was a group of pro-Hamas, these type of demonstrations, and they were marching on the synagogue. They were probably 40 feet from the synagogue, and the police allowed them to march. They threw up some barricades, and we quickly were on the other side. I was with our children then in Teaneck and protesting, because I believe that one should never run from the anti-Semite. You stand up to the anti-Semite with respect, with dignity, with hadar. That's what it's all about. That's what the ultimate standing up is, what the IDF does. And I'm unbending. I am unbending in defense of the IDF. Unbending. I do think it's the most moral army on the face of this earth. Forget about its beyond its strength, what they've accomplished. I don't know if any of you saw the pager stuff, even on 60 Minutes. There was some negative stuff, but it was pretty amazing to hear how they did this. Of just part of the stuff that was reported occurred. So I'm standing there at this demonstration, and they're marching with these gigantic flags. I think you heard that, Arnie. And I closed my eyes, and I saw the Ku Klux Klan marching on churches down south with their big flags and their white uniforms. And that's what I was thinking. And then my heart dropped, Arnie, because in those days, the Goodmans and the others, the Heschels, we were marching. The Jewish community was marching with our Black brothers and sisters. And my commitment to civil rights is unconditional. Whether they march with us or they don't, that's our responsibility. That's why we went down to the AME church right after what occurred there in Charleston. That was our responsibility to do that. But I thought to myself, looking around, there are no people of color with us. And it broke my heart. Again, the commitment is unconditional, but I think your point is well taken. And this is not just something that I feel. I think this is being felt by even the more liberal leadership in the Jewish community. I think they do feel isolated, and we are isolated. I plan to give a shir, but this sounds like a shir itself. I know when you think about it, that Bibi Netanyahu, who arguably is the most important Jew, he's the one who was elected as Prime Minister of Israel. And beyond whether you support him or you don't support him, the very office of the prime ministership, for me, from a theological perspective, that is the embodiment of the ancient kingdom of Israel, which didn't work. And I think this system of leadership is an attempt to replace that old system of leadership. But he is the embodiment of Am Yisrael. Like it or not, he is the prime minister of Israel. 50% of the Jewish world lives in Israel today. 50%. And it's going to be much, much higher in the coming days, without a doubt. And the Poles, after all they did to our people, and they argue that it's not them, there were too many Poles who were complicit and were part of what was unfolding. I've had experience with the Poles protesting against the convent and all of that. They're not going to allow Bibi Netanyahu to come threatening him with arrest. Think about it. It's just, it's wild. And this is the world that we're in, and yet I feel very optimistic. I feel very optimistic because of the state of Israel and because of how the horror of October 7th. But what's remarkable is the way Israel responded to it. Not that it occurred, but the way we've responded. And as I said at a demonstration, Elaine, this past Sunday, young people in America too, they've responded, they've stood up. This is like the new Soviet Jewry movement. I'm very optimistic about the future.
Avi, I have to leave now, but
yeah, you have to tell us a word because
but Daniel Gordis this morning put out what was written by a Talmudic scholar, a new stanza to the Ma'uz Tzur with references throughout our history and today. And it's beautiful. And if you can get it, I think his it's Inside Israel, something like that, but it's Daniel Gordis. And it was written, not by Daniel Gordis, but he analyzes it. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just leave you with this Hanukkah vart. I know you're rushing out, which I think is what our response should be. I would say it very simply. Our response should be to respond. Our response should be not, if we can, not to go into depression. Yes, to shed tears when we hear about the many soldiers every week. Synagogues hear their names, but not to allow this to snuff out our light. Our response has to be everyone in their own way. I maintain everyone can make a difference. Everyone in their own way, even if it's just lighting a Hanukkah candle. That's not a just, that's important. That we have to stand up. We have to be very, very strong. And the Hanukkah vart is that they found enough oil to last one day, and it lasted 8 days. So it would seem to me that the miracle was not for 8 days. The miracle was for 7 days. Let's think about that. They had enough oil for the first day.
Right.
So the first day wasn't a miracle. So if it lasted 8 days, beginning from day 2, we should be celebrating 7 days. And my humble input here is the following. What would most people do if they knew I have enough of something for one day, but I need it for 8 days? Most people would say, why even try to light the candle on the first day? It's useless. It's useless. And people would give up. After all, we need it until we can get the pure oil, they say, it would have taken 8 days. My argument is that the power of the first day, the miracle of the first day, was that we should recognize that against all odds, we didn't give up. We did whatever we could. Stanley Langer used to quote a professor from City College, a philosopher who was actually quite famous in his day. I believe his name was Morris Cohen. And Cohen used to say, there's nothing wrong with trying and failing, but there is something wrong with failing to try.
Right.
That's very powerful. Nothing wrong with trying and failing. Something wrong with failing to try. And that's what we're all about. Against all odds to stand up. When we think about Hakamat Hamdina in 1948, the establishment of the state.
Yeah.
Wow. wow. I mean, you saw Nancy Spielberg's film on how they were American flyers who came to Israel to try to help the Israeli Air Force, if you could call it an Air Force. And it's actually quite comical because they were saying how they got into the plane and with expletives, they turned on the ignition and the thing wasn't running, the thing wasn't moving. And look at us now. With God's help, never should we feel invincible. Invincibility is the pathway to disaster. That's what happened on October 7th. We thought we were invincible. If you think you're invincible, you're in a lot of trouble. You have to believe in your strength, but you have to also know the enemy and don't think it's coming to you, the victory. But look how far we've come. Look at the Israeli Air Force. Think about it. God forbid, Al Tiftach Pela Satan. How many sorties have they flown over Gaza, over Lebanon, Yemen, Iran? In the probably tens of thousands, and we've not lost one pilot, not one plane. Thank God it should continue. It's quite remarkable. So I guess this Hanukkah, my message is, we have, it's a dark time, but this is a remarkable time. And every morning, you know that I say the prayer, Yididi Ahuvi Mahmad Nafshi, O God, my precious God, Ana Azor Li Lahodot Lecha. Help me, O God, say this with me, help me, O God, that I should offer thanksgiving to you, Al Kol Habrachot Shehe'enaktali, for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon me. Thank you. Velo latet et libi, and not to allow my heart to be weighed down ala brachot shechaserot li, by the blessings I don't have. Ve'ana azor li, and please God help me, likabel ba'ahava, to receive with love, et hayom she'omed lefanai, may I receive with love the day before me, Yom Kadosh, as a holy day, v'rav erech, and a qualitative day. Again, the Hebrew is Yididi Ahuvi Mahmad Nafshi. Ana Azor Li Lahodot Lecha, Al Kol HaBrachot She'enakta Li, V'lo Latet Et Libi Al Brachot Shechaserot Li. Oh God, help me. Thank you for what I have, and that my heart should not be weighed down by what I don't have. Often, and here I'm talking to myself and letting you listen, because this prayer is easier said than done. Often what we don't have so weighs us down that it defines our lives. And I know in my heart that's not a good thing. There has to be a way when I can break out of that box and celebrate what I do have, which I think inspires one, God willing, to do more. And here too, look, every person has their challenges, but I've shared with you my motto in life, never to allow what I cannot do to control what I can do. Never allow what I can't control to define what I can control. Not so simple. Everyone has challenges. I have serious challenges now. Here we are, we're in America, we're not in Israel. Toby is in a protocol. It's a tough time. But what did Shimon Peres say? This is like a coach's pep talk. I'm talking to myself, though. He says, they asked him, how do you stay so optimistic? When he was 90, he was running around like he was 20. He always was up. He said something like this, optimist and pessimist die the same way. They just live differently. I choose to live as an optimist. There's something to that. Again, easier said than done, but that's what Hanukkah is. That's the broader message of Hanukkah. It's dark out there, light a candle. You never know. There's a difference of opinion. I'm going on and on here, but I prepared for so long, but this is my unprepared stuff. There's a view of Bet Shammai that when you light, he thought that scientifically, this candle lasted for 8 days. So the first day, they lit 8 days. That's what they hoped they would have, the miracle would do. And the second day, he lit 7 candles, pochtim v'hochim, and then 6, and then 5, and then 4. But what prevailed? The view of Bet Hillel. Now, the light doesn't diminish. Let the light go up 1, 2, 3 until you reach 8. Anyone? Any thoughts on Hanukkah?
I would like to say,
Please. Linda, it's so good to see you, Linda. I saw you in shul and I tried to say hello, but I didn't succeed. So
I'm not Linda. I'm Beverly.
Beverly, I'm sorry. I was talking to guy Beverly. Please.
Oh, I want to say that it is talks like you give that are so inspiring. Everybody goes down. The trick is coming back up. Not letting down weigh you down. Can't help it. Cold weather, it's enough to drag you down. But everybody knows the sun is going to shine again. And your talks are critically important. And although I have heard them for almost 50 years now, I never get tired of it. I always need the boost. It's like a vitamin pill. It always gives me a charge to not give up and to never give up. And so I think that when we talked in the rehab center about the future, what are we going to do in the future? It seems so apparent to me that as you keep talking, and you're talking to people who have heard what you have to say, that you have such a vital, important role to play talking to people and lifting them. And I bless you with all my influence, uh, 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 I have a helper up there to give you strength to continue doing it, because you really are like a battery charge. You just boost people, strengthen people, and make them think. And and all I don't write to you, I don't call you, but I have you in mind, and I think you are really a blessing, and have been a blessing in our lives.
I have a word to say
And
also.
and it. What could I say? I could just say, bis 120.
Thank you. Thank you
Good
so much.
health, in good health.
Thank you.
I
Undeserved,
don't
but
agree
thank
with
you.
you on everything. I'm not, you're not a guru. I
No,
don't.
I'm not.
No, you're not a guru.
No, I'm not into that at all, Bev, as
Well,
you know.
but
One of the reasons why in the Orthodox world I'm unfortunately, but I am so controversial. It's Orthodoxy is basically a hierarchical system. You're basically, the power comes from the titular rabbi, and I'm not into that at all. I have, whatever little I've done is not mine, and in many ways it's yours. It's what I've learned from you. I can quote Bev, chapter and verse of stuff you've told me. I still remember one time you said to me, Bev, I gave a talk. I may have thought it was new, but you knew it wasn't new. And you came up to me and you said something like, some ideas have to be mentioned over and over and over again. And that meant a lot to me. And just that thought, and, we're trading back and forth praise, but, you didn't just talk the talk, you walked the walk in everything that the Fedmans do with Judy. And it's quite miraculous what you've done.
You want to talk, Ted?
Well, I would just like to say a few words. I think talking the talk is one thing, but walking the walk is another. In other words, we can't just feel optimistic. We have to do something about it. We have our ways, other people have theirs, but it isn't enough just to light a light. And I think that we have to remember that before the first candle is lit, there's awful lot of darkness, and we have to deal with that reality and know why it was so dark, no matter how pleasant it is. We all know that October 7th was horrible, and we can't just think of the magnificence of the Israeli army and its supporting population and turning that situation around. But we have to examine that situation itself, why the Hamas and affiliates could rampage for 6 hours without a confrontation by an Israeli army and destroy so many lives. But again, I'd just like to reiterate, amen to what you said and amen to what Beverly said.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda, what's your feelings about this Hanukkah, if I may ask you?
I think that we should try to bring as much joy into our lives as we can.
Right.
It's been a difficult year, and I think we all need a little bit of joy this year. So keeping everything in Israel in mind and lighting the extra candle and giving extra tzedukah and things like that, but also trying to keep our spirits up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I used to, when we had programs for people with special needs. So they became a choir, and we used to sing a little bit of light, a little bit of light pushes away the darkness, pushes away the darkness. Tzad min ha'or, tzad min ha'or, docher harbe min ha'choshech. Yep. And did someone else want to say something? By all means.
May I think that you?
I was going to say we can't finish without
I just wanted to say that I think that Bev said it beautifully, and that when I am feeling my most spiritual or my most doubtful, the voice I hear in my head is yours.
No.
And so I thank you for that too.
Thank you. It's undeserved, but I really, from heart to heart, thank you so much. It's, and
You've meant so much to so many people. I think that's such a wonderful thing.
Thank you. Lance?
I want to cite scripture for my purpose.
Oh,
So Joseph said to his
good
brothers,
morning, Lance. Good morning,
Good
Lance.
morning.
I love you. I love you.
Chag Hanukkah Sameach,
Yeah, good. That's
Shabbat
good way to
Shalom,
do
and
it.
Chodesh Tov.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I really want to say this. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near to him, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." And Joseph knows, as well as anybody ever, that the whole thing is God's. God's. Chevel, chevel, chevel is the way I interpret it. And I would further say, without October 7th, there would be an Nasrallah, there would be a Hania, there would be a Sinwar, there would be an Assad in Syria, and there would be the Democratic Party in 2025. It's all God. It's all God. And I think your optimism and everything you said about the IDF, Rav Avi, is 100% on target.
Yes. Appreciate
Hi,
that.
something else.
Anna, how are you doing, Anna?
I'm not Anna.
I know I'm looking at Anna now.
Oh,
She doesn't hear me. Okay.
okay. I'm
And
like,
Merle, how are you doing?
not well,
Is
Merle,
that me?
Merle, right?
but
Oh, I
well,
just want to thank you.
I
I
haven't
needed
finished.
this.
Oh,
I'm
Lance is
sorry.
not finished. I'm sorry, Merle. Please.
I'm sorry.
I will come. Lance, yes, I'm
No, it's
sorry.
Laser. Laser wants to speak. Please
Oh,
allow
Is that
Laser to speak.
laser?
Whoa, Laser's on?
Laser is on. I just
What?
had to mute him because there was too much going on.
Laser?
Laser, do you know how to unmute yourself?
I can't see Laser.
Let me see if I can get him to unmute.
Oh, I miss you so much, Laser. I got to do better in connecting.
Let me just ask him, Laser, if you log off and then on again, then you won't be muted and we'll come back to you. There were just too many noises, so I had to mute everybody. So I'm sorry about that, and I don't know how to make you unmuted.
Wow. Okay. Muriel, what were you saying?
I just wanted
Okay.
to thank you all because I really needed to be uplifted at this
Okay.
time. So I thank you all. And I also wanted to say I grew up in Borough Park, and then as an adult I lived in Flatbush. So I never had a rabbi. So now I feel like I have a whole community.
Yes.
So I thank you all.
And I appreciate the way you framed that, the whole by it. It's we have so much to be grateful for, without diminishing our challenges. We have so much to be grateful for. I'll say a couple of things about Israel that I think we take for granted. So much to be grateful on this Hanukkah. You know, in 48, we were fighting this Hanukkah. It was still, I think, going on. But at that point, only 3% of the world's Jewish population was living in Israel, 3 to 4%. And now we're 50%. Not 600,000 people, but 7 million Jews and 8.5 million citizens. It's quite something. And I'll stop here because I see that Leza is unmuted. Leza, how are you doing?
I don't know. Do you hear me?
Yes, Leza.
Good.
Leza, I
Finally.
have tears in my eyes listening to you, just hearing your voice.
That's the way I feel about you, Avi. Just hearing your voice.
Leza, I miss you
It does-
so.
It does things for me.
It's not the same without you for me, Leza.
The point you made all too briefly, but so meaningfully, was not so much on the positive side, but not to let the negative weigh you down. And that, I think, is turning things around 180 degrees. But it was tremendous. And you have a knack of doing that, making very, very meaningful, short sentences that have a tremendous impact. And I thank you for it.
Well, Leza, I so miss you, Leza. I know, thank God you're on with Rev Stephen, who is, for Toby and I, like our son. I just, Leza, I forever will have memories of, the classes that we used to do in-house, and you'd be on my right, and every time I'd say something, I'd be peeking over to see, what does Leza think? And as I look at all of you, what do you think? So it's really a love affair, and I'm so grateful for all of you. Should all be well. And so I'll tell you a story you never heard, because there are some people who haven't heard it. So I used to pick up my father at the airport. Now you all know that story.
Yes, we all heard it.
Well, you know the story about my Stanley that I once told the story about on Yom Kippur. I used to, at the time after Kol Nidre, he would tell a special story. I told a story about a little girl was playing hide and seek. Do you remember this one? She plays hide and seek, and then she starts crying to the rabbi. She says to the rabbi, I was playing hide and seek and no one came looking for me. So the rabbi comforts her and says, that's how God must feel. There he is, no one's looking for him. So the following year, I thought it was a pretty good story. So I emotionally started telling you the story. Once there was a little girl and she was playing hide and seek. And then the third consecutive year, I thought to myself, maybe there's somebody in the audience who hasn't heard the story. So there was once this little girl, and now I'm on my 7th consecutive year telling the same story about this little girl. And as you know, no one sits in front of the shul, not the rabbi, not the president. And Stanley Langer was the president. He was in the back. And it came back to me that when I got up with great emotion, I was saying, one time, there was this little girl playing hide and seek. And Stanley, because I heard the laughter, turns to everyone around him and says, if I find that little girl, I'll kill her. He would never criticize the rabbi, but if I find that little girl, kill her. Oh, well, okay. Love you guys. Next week we'll maybe we'll do what I prepared for today. Love you and have a sweet
If I have one more comment?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Rav Avi, I think
Yes,
the word
Judy.
Hanukkah contains in it the word chinuch, which means educate. So in the same theme of everybody's comments about, you're helping us to be uplifted, you live your being a menachek, an educator of us for how to live to make every day like Hanukkah.
Thank you. And I truly, please, this comes from a deep part of me. I truly feel it's the other way around. What little I've done it's tiny in comparison to what I've received from all of you. And I'm deeply grateful. And I know Clara is in Jerusalem. So the last word just from Yerushalayim, tell us a good word. Hi, Estelle. Clara, you're muted.
Clara, can you unmute yourself? See if you can do it.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little late. Okay.
Here's Clara.
We missed you, Estelle.
I'm actually not in Jerusalem. I'm in Montana visiting my daughter.
Oh,
And about on the 14th of January, I'm hoping to be in New York and see and hug and kiss all of you. Because I miss you terribly.
Wow.
And the ironic thing for a Jew to come to Israel and not have a shul where you feel at home. And so you're still my home and you're still my shul, and you always, always, always will be my rabbi.
Well, first of all, Claire, I have such wonderful memories, filled with blessed memory, and I have memories of Maya. I remember Maya as a little girl at her bat mitzvah. She stood up, she was all of 12 years old, and she wowed a packed shul. And I don't know if you remember, Claire, I said to you, she is something, and we have to. I was then involved in Torah leadership seminar, as I remember it.
And you stayed up till midnight to make it happen.
Yeah, and Clara once, in some tribute, talking to Toby and myself, I think you wrote something like, I changed my country, I changed my husband, but I'm not going to change my rabbi. Did I remember right?
You remember right, and my gift and my honor to Israel is that my granddaughter, 6 years and 4 months in 8200, and my grandson, her husband, is in Air Force, and we came from the trip on October 9 and October 10. They both went immediately in Meloim like everybody else in Israel.
And I want to mention, I just heard the tragedy of first 3 soldiers yesterday, and
yes,
this young man, Botzer, who's a great musician, 43 years old, 8 children, and he was doing miluim, and he apparently was in a car, and I don't know what happened, but he lost his life in a car accident. My hunch is he was probably exhausted. Actually, you can look him up. He was a brilliant musician. Botzer, Botzer, musician, it'll come up.
So. Well, that's what makes Israel so great, because regardless who your father is, how high he is, they all go to the army.
Yeah.
But the way I live my life is next to me at night, I have my iPad, and my iPad does sirens for the whole country but Jerusalem. My phone does sirens for Jerusalem. And when the siren on the country comes, I look, where is my grandchildren? Did Ariella work from home today and doesn't have a shelter? Or did she make it to the office and she has a shelter? And that's how the everyday life goes too.
Well,
my kids do the same thing.
Arilana, who lives in Efrat, the mother of 9 of our grandchildren. So Efrat has had its losses, but Ilana says there's sort of a very close network of parents with children in the army. And Ilana, I saw this. She would greet a friend in the market and she would say, how many do you have? So you would think in America that maybe these are people who are so close. So they're asking, how many children do you have? How many grandchildren? No. When they say in Efrat, how many do you have? What they mean is, how many are in the army? And that's the way it is.
You get on a train and somebody shows you a picture of their child in the army, and I show the picture of my grandchild in the army, and we connected.
I think it was Dr. King who once said, if there's nothing in this world that you are prepared to die for, you're not living. And I pray that they only know life, no more death. But it is something. Something, because like I tell my grandchildren now, my older grandchildren, I wanted them to be fighters. Now I tell them, I wish you weren't fighters. And they humble me when they say, it's our responsibility. And it's not so simple. Not so simple. On that note.
Can I say just one thing?
No. Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but I read in the paper that in Gaza, the gangs are just stealing food from the people. This would never happen in Israel. There wouldn't be gangs stealing food from their own people. I mean, the difference is so great. I don't know if you'd mentioned it earlier, but I was horrified when I saw that, stealing from their own people just to be gangs and just to take a shortage away. I don't know. It's so different. Everything is.
My blessings, my love to everyone. And actually, this was real. I'm sorry, Linda. Did you want to say something? Linda?
I just wanted to thank you for the very uplifting share. It wasn't
Thank
what you
you.
expected, but it was what we needed. So thank you.
You know, sometimes you never know. But it was nice just talking a little bit, and I hope it was okay with everyone.
Yes.
My blessings, my love to everybody. Chag Urim
Okay.
Sameach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Feel better.
Thank
Take
you.
care.